It's still happy hour with John Gaskins. This round's on me.
Well, you really know it is truly game week and the season is on in FCS football when we are chatting with this guy, Sam Herder. To me, the foremost authority on the football championship series level of college football. 8 years worth of just crushing it at Hero Sports. And we're going to go through the Jacks and the Yotes today. Of course, the other two big schools in our neck of the woods now, Montana and Montana State. No North Dakota State in anybody's way anymore. And, you know, who are the teams to beat beyond all of those? Big injury at UND as well that we need to discuss. So it's great to have Sam here. But this comes at a time when we learn yesterday that Sam tweeted out the news that his position was eliminated by the company that owns Hero Sports, who basically he helped build to be a pretty strong brand with his own brand. So, you know, may as well get that out of the way, rip that Band-Aid off. You just jump right into your own endeavor, Sam Hero Sports, and I'll let you tell us all about it so people can keep finding you, because you just turn the page right away. We got a football season to play and to watch, and you're just trucking right along, which I find very inspiring and exciting.
Yeah, well, I think anyone in sports media or just media in general, you're maybe not expecting to get laid off, but you're kind of prepared for it, just because that's the nature of the industry. I mean, long time, well-respected folks at ESPN, get laid off, and so you always wonder, if that happens to me, what would I do? And so that's, I always thought, I would try the independent route, pretty much right away. I mean, week 0 is right here, and so might as well jump right into it right away. So yeah, it was something I, again, wasn't necessarily expecting, but I was prepared for. I don't have any hard feelings at all. It was genuinely like the best job I had under BetMGM and Hero Sports. I literally told myself every week the job is too good to be true, whether it just be what I was covering, the flexibility I had. No one told me what to write about. The pay was really good, benefits, all that. So I'm like, I'm going to ride this out as long as I can, but one of these days that call might come. And so I was prepared for it. I wasn't necessarily totally blindsided by it, I guess.
Right. And as I told you, same thing happened to me 2 months into the pandemic in 2020, lost a daily radio show. Fortunately for me, it was the summertime and it was COVID. So you had some nice, once in a lifetime amounts of unemployment checks coming in. And I had a few months to, I was only out of it for about a month. And then the Sioux Falls Canaries hired me to keep myself occupied over the summer. But so I've been there. I feel you. But for you, it's great. It's in the sense of football season is here. There's interest, and so right away, people are going to go right to where they need to go. Where do they need to go to find you besides where you've been on Twitter this whole time?
Yeah. So I launched an independent. Or I guess not necessarily an independent site, but my own independent coverage on Patreon. Some people know what it is. Some people aren't as familiar with it. It's a lot of people might be familiar with Substack. It is pretty similar to that to a certain extent, but I really like Patreon in that you can do. I really like the layout of it, and you can do video, podcasting, audio, and articles as well. Plus, anyone that subscribes, they do get an email notification. So in a way, it is kind of a newsletter as well. So that is where I decided to park my content. It's called Sam Herder Sports. The URL is kind of long, and so if you just Google Sam Herder Sports Patreon, it should pop up right away on Google. It is behind a paywall, and I know that a lot of people. I worked in the newspaper industry for a few years. I understand that people don't like paying for stuff some people don't like paying for stuff that they're used to getting for free. But, for me to make a living off of this, I can't give it away for free anymore because no one's writing me, checks anymore. So it is $8 a month, but you'll get a daily podcast called FCS Daily Dose Monday through Friday. So a podcast every single day, articles every single day. I think I might be biased, but I certainly think it's worth $8 a month.
Well, plenty of people have said so as well in response to your tweet about the news yesterday, and I'm not surprised. At Sam Herder FCS on Twitter, and yeah, I think there are a lot of people out there who are going to be willing to do this, including me. So again, just happy that you had a plan and you're just bolting right out of the gates, and wishing the best for you. And the last question I have along these lines is, you've said that not just covering college football, talking about it, writing about it, daily basis has been your dream job, specifically FCS. How and why did you develop such a passion for this level?
Yeah, well, my FCS coverage began in a way back in 2012. I was at NDSU. I worked for the student newspaper, and so I was there from the 2012 through 2014 season up in the press box as a working media member. And obviously, that was right when the Bison were getting rolling with their dynasty. And so that was my introduction to the FCS and the FCS playoffs, and really enjoyed it. I can't even remember in college like what exactly my dream job was. I don't know if it was necessarily covering the FCS, but at some point around like 2015, 2016, when I began freelancing FCS content, it was kind of just something I wanted to do on a full-time basis. And then I got that opportunity in 2018. So I think it's kind of the same argument of, if you're South Dakota State, you want to be big fish, little pond, or, smaller fish in a bigger pond. And for me, like, everyone is covering the Ohio States and the Texases of the world. And there just isn't a whole lot of FCS media coverage out there. I definitely think the coverage is growing, especially nationally, but there still isn't a whole lot of content out there when it comes to the FCS. So the access is great. I mean, I had head coaches and ADs and commissioners texting and calling me yesterday. If I covered the Pac-12 and got laid off, I don't think anyone would really care, because there's 100 other people covering it. So I just really like the level overall. Obviously, it's not all sunshine and roses in the subdivision. There's some things to be concerned about with the transfer portal and realignment. But yeah, for now, really all I want to cover is the FCS. Now, if 5 years from now, South Dakota State and the Montana schools end up in the Mountain West, then I'll cover the Mountain West on top of the rest of the FCS. And so I can be pretty flexible on what I cover. But right now, I would just phrase it as the teams that remain in the FCS, I want to keep on covering them, for a long, long time. And if that means they move subdivisions, I'll just follow them to the new subdivision.
There you go. Well, I mean, 25,000 plus people have followed you. There's a market for this. You've earned it. And I'll repeat what Brendan from the Jackrabbit Illustrated podcast said to me a couple of weeks ago, that, as I'm sure you've learned this, that FCS fans are as engaged and informed, if not more so, than a lot of FBS and Power 4 fans, partly because they have to work a little harder to find it, but they know where to go first, and that's usually Sam Herder. So it's great. So I'm thrilled to have you here. And so let's get on with it, and let's just start with that big picture that you've mentioned, because everybody's wondering, and we're talking about it. We're asking coaches and ADs about it at SDSU and USD about someday making the leap North Dakota State did. And so I guess how, if at all, do you see things like that happening? SDSU, USD, and Montana State, and UND specifically. The rest of the Dakotas and Montana.
Yeah, I think whenever there is realignment news that hits, there's always like a 1 to 2 week social media freak out, where whether it's fans of certain teams saying, oh, we got to go now, we got to get out of here, or there's just other college football accounts saying, like, these are the next 5 FCS teams that are going to be right behind NDSU moving up to the FBS. And there was a lot of people saying, oh, like, it won't be long until South Dakota State is right behind NDSU joining the Mountain West. I think that could happen one day, but I don't think it's necessarily, in the short term here. I don't think, really, when you look at the FBS conferences, none of them necessarily need to add. Conference USA might want a couple more, but I don't think South Dakota State or either of the Montana fan bases would really enjoy going to Conference USA. So that would probably be more of like a Tarleton or Stephen F. Austin. But the Mountain West right now, they're at 10 football members. They've always said maybe maybe 12 might be a good number, but we're fine with 10. And so that always perks people's ears up as far as saying, oh, the two Montana schools would be a perfect fit, or maybe it's a combination of UC Davis, South Dakota State. But if the Mountain West added 2 more FCS schools, it wouldn't bring enough value to increase the revenue pot for everyone. It would just be more hands dipping into the revenue pot. And so whoever from the FCS that would join the Mountain West, whether it's the Montana schools or South Dakota State, it would kind of have to be a sweetheart deal for the Mountain West, similar to what NDSU did, right? Like NDSU said, we're not going to take any of the TV revenue. We'll pay whatever it was, $12 million to get in. That's what these schools are going to have to do. And so you need the location, you need the money, and you need the wants to go to the FBS. Those are the 3 main things now. These schools kind of have the location, especially the Montana schools. I think as far as the money, I think the Montana schools are getting there. I think they're fundraising at a high level to at least be prepared. But when it comes to the wants, I think the level of interest and the level of urgency has increased some for South Dakota State and the Montana schools as far as making that jump someday. But I don't think it's to the level of where NDSU is at. Certainly not to the level of Sacramento State and their FBS want. So I don't think it's an urgent thing that Montana State, South Dakota State are going, we need to get to the Mountain West as soon as possible. We'll do whatever you need us to do. You need us to write you a check for $15 million and not take any, TV money. I don't think they need to make that jump right now and do that, because in the 2030s, all heck could break loose when it comes to realignment. And so things might work themselves out as it is. Plus, these next 5 years could be the glory years for South Dakota State or the glory years for Montana State, where they rack up national championships. And it's still exciting for those fan bases to win national championships, unlike Fargo, where, understandably it got, they got a little tired of it. So I guess to round that up, I think there is interest in them moving up to the FBS one day, but I don't think we need to get there within 3 years, no matter what.
Yeah. And look, you covered the Bison for a long time. There's significant belief that they're going to do well and prosper right away. What I want to ask you about the rest of us left over in the FCS, it's something that the Jackson Yotes fans of this show don't love me bringing up, but it's week 1. We're back to square one. It's there. I mean, how much of a loss for the FCS is North Dakota State?
Yeah, I think it's a nuanced question and answer. It hurts the FCS in all the obvious ways because NDSU's brand carried so much weight, and they were good for the subdivision and the attention that they brought the FCS, and they raised the bar so incredibly high. Like if NDSU was pretty good throughout the 2010s, maybe they won 1 or 2 national championships, like South Dakota State wouldn't be where they're at right now if NDSU wasn't so good. Same thing with Montana State, because the Bison raised the bar so high and said, if any of you guys want to knock us off, like this is what you're going to have to do. And South Dakota State got to that point for a couple of years. Montana State has now gotten to that point. So I think they've raised the bar very high in the FCS to win an FCS title. You could counter that and say maybe that's not such a good thing, because if the bar to win an FCS title is unattainable for 98% of the FCS, maybe that's not necessarily a good thing, where the Bison kept on winning titles, and the more they won, the more FCS fatigue there was in Fargo. Meanwhile, in the FCS, the more the Bison won, there was more Bison fatigue in the FCS. Out east, down south, out west, even the Montanas, they were chasing NDSU, but a lot of them were saying, can NDSU just leave already? Because we're tired of seeing the same story. I mean, I went to NDSU. I don't have any fandom involved. And even I was like, okay, I don't need to cover 3 more NDSU national championships in the next 5 years. I've done that story 10 times. Like, as a media member, I want something new. I want new matchups. So I think it opens the door for, like I said, new storylines, new matchups, new blood deep in the playoffs. Now, I say that, and if we have 3 more South Dakota State versus Montana State national title games in the next 5 years, those fans are also going to start getting to the point where NDSU was, where it's okay, it was cool the first couple of times. Now it's like, so like that fatigue factor could set in within 5 years for some of these other fan bases. But for right now, like winning a national championship means a ton for all of these programs remaining in the FCS. And so I think it helps the FCS in that way, just opening the door for more teams to rise up.
Yeah, well, I want to follow that up with, okay, do you think that's what might happen? But first, I just want to nip this in the bud. Do you feel, or did you get any indication from Hero Sports that NDSU moving on from the FCS, and a large part of your following was Bison fans because you went there, you've covered them a lot by nature of their dominance in FCS. Is that part of the reason why? Have you been given any indication of that's why you're no longer with Hero? So I know, because I
No,
know some tweeters asked you that, so I'm just curious.
oh no, like I said, I have nothing but respect for BetMGM. I loved working there. I loved my coworkers, but they didn't care about the FCS. Like BetMGM is a multi-billion-dollar company, right? They don't care about the FCS market. And so, again, that's why I was so thankful to have the job I had, because no one told me, hey, you can't cover this anymore, or
Right.
hey, cover this instead. They let me cover the FCS, but like the decision didn't have anything to do with realignment or them being like, oh, the FCS market this, the FCS market that. Like our page views were higher than our FBS page views. It was more just kind of the usual corporate restructuring in the current landscape. So yeah, it had nothing to do with FCS in particular. It was more so just Hero Sports overall. The focus just isn't going to be on Hero Sports overall. It's going to be more on the BetMGM blog.
Got it. Meanwhile, let's ask you, what's more likely over this year and maybe the next 2 or 3 years, as you kind of alluded to? Now that North Dakota State is gone, the path is much clearer, much clearer. Regular season literally for teams in the Valley, but also in the playoffs for Montana and Montana State. What's more likely, that the Grizz and the Bobcats and the Jackrabbits kind of own and dominate the FCS over the next this year and over the next 2 or 3 years, or there comes an evening out and there's more contenders, particularly from other parts of the country besides up here? And by the way, where do you see USD fitting into all this?
Yeah, I think like NDSU leaving creates more parity, but I feel like that is more in a way like tier 2, where like there could be more teams, newer teams that have a chance to make a run to the quarterfinals and into the semifinals. But when it comes to legitimate national title contenders, I still think it's going to be pretty top heavy, where you do have Montana State, South Dakota State, Montana. The Grizz need to get there more consistently. Obviously, we put Montana in that top tier, and I think deservedly so, just because of their incredible fan base and their facilities and support and all that. But they have only reached the national championship one time in the last 20 or so years. But I think we kind of just put those 3 teams in the top tier now. So I think what will be interesting is with NDSU, it was, okay, it's these 4 teams, and then you have, some teams, starting to catch them, whether it be a Tarleton State or, a South Dakota, UC Davis, North Dakota, obviously Illinois State made the run. Now, is it just going to be, instead of 4 teams in that top tier, is it just going to be 3 teams in that top tier without NDSU, or are more teams going to reach that top tier consistently? And I do think there are a lot of teams rising and trending upward. Like South Dakota, how they're supporting football. I think UND and their facilities. There are multiple FCS programs down south that their NIL is in the low millions, or their revenue share in NIL, like whatever you want to call it. So like there are teams down south paying players a lot of money down there. So they're coming as well. But again, can they match up with the Montana States and the South Dakota States in the trenches? But I do think you look at teams down south, whether it be a Tennessee Tech or a Tarleton State, in SFA, I think those teams are on the rise. I think UC Davis is on the rise as well. Lehigh, Villanova, those are strong programs out east. Rhode Island out east, they're on the rise. And so I do think there are teams trending upward. But like I said a little bit ago, that bar to win a national title is so high that can any of these teams get to that bar? Hopefully, that'd be fun, but I have to see it to believe it first.
Is Montana State the absolute favorite this year? They're the defending champs. They're the preseason number 1. Montana's 2, SDSU's 3. How big of a favorite are the Bobcats, and why?
Yeah, I think there is a gap there. Now, the Grizz could get hot, but I don't know how well the Grizz are going to match up in the trenches this year with Montana State. I do think South Dakota State could match up well in the trenches, and then SDSU certainly, if they can match up in the trenches, the Jacks also have the skill talent, whether it be at linebacker, safety, wide receiver, tight ends, quarterback as well, obviously, to where I think they could go toe to toe with Montana State on a neutral field. Which if they met in the national championship, that would be a neutral field. So I don't think it's not to the level of 2023 South Dakota State where everyone was fighting for second place. It's not quite to that level, but I do think it is Montana State versus the field. But I do think they will have a couple more legit challengers in 2026 compared to 2023 South Dakota State, because the Jacks, I know there were some close games in there, but the Jacks really just rolled through most of their opponents.
Okay, it's the quarterback Justin Lamson, and what else makes them so strong of a favorite?
Yeah, I mean they're too deep for the most part. Looks pretty similar, especially offensively. I mean they return three full-time starters on the offensive line. Like you said, Lamson is coming back at quarterback. Adam Jones is an All-American running back. Taco Dowler, All-American wide receiver. Rocky Lencioni, he's an all-conference level tight end. I think they bring back their top three receivers overall. And then defensively, they do have to replace their entire starting defensive line, but they rotated so much last year that they'll have four new starters on the on the defensive line that all played hundreds of snaps. They also lost their top three corners from last year, so that's also an unknown right now. But I think they feel pretty comfortable just with how they recruited that they'll be able to replace those guys pretty well. But they return like their top four linebackers, their top six safeties, hundreds of experience of snaps on the D line. So they lost some guys to the transfer portal, but they had probably 6 to 7, if not 8 guys that all turned down significant NIL offers to run it back again in Bozeman.
Yeah. And then in Missoula, we know that a lot of their offensive weaponry is back. Potent offense, the quarterback, the running back, at least one receiver. In your mind, will they have the defense to narrow the gap between themselves and Montana State?
Yeah, that's the big question mark there's kind of a lot of big question marks around Montana. Like obviously, how do they look without Bobby Hauck at the helm and under Bobby Kennedy? Does it look like a different Montana team? How are they operationally? How clean are they? I think they're going to let it rip on offense, and they already kind of did last year. But Hauck was defensive minded, special teams minded. Let's kind of grind opponents down. I could see Montana winning games 45-28 this year, and allowing 28 points a game isn't great, but if you're scoring 45, they could win 10 or so ball games, during the regular season. And Yotes is coming back, Gilman is coming back, Brooks Davis, their stud wide receiver, coming back. They do have to replace their entire offensive line, and so that's a question mark right there. But yeah, defensively is the other big question mark, because they ran that 3-3-5 last year, which was kind of chaotic. When it works, it works. When it doesn't, they can really get gashed. They brought in a new defensive coordinator from Eastern Washington. It's going to be a more traditional defense, more of a four-man front, more gap sounds. I think they have some players that could really thrive in that system, like Peyton Wing, Solomon Tuliupupu as well, who's in his 9th year of eligibility. I think it's his ninth. It's either his 8th or 9th year of eligibility. Solomon is playing. Yeah, he came from USC, where he had a bunch of season-ending injuries, so that's kind of an interesting aside right there. But cornerback is kind of an unknown. Defensive line is an unknown as well for Montana. They beefed up there, but they have a couple of defensive ends and Jake Mason and Hayden Schwartz, that in the 3-3-5 they were kind of lining up a little bit more inside the tackles. Now they'll be outside the tackles, which is kind of what defensive ends are used to. So I think those two guys can thrive in the new defensive system. But yeah, offensively, they're going to let it rip. They'll be one of the top offenses in the FCS, but defensively, we'll see what level they're at.
Yep. South Dakota State, strong favorite to win the MVFC, according to the media votes, 28 out of 34 first place votes. Of course, this is a jammed league. It feels like from 2 to 6 with Illinois State, Youngstown State, UND, USD, Southern Illinois, a lot of returning quarterbacks in that group. And I mean, USD's picked to finish 5th in the league, and they're 12th in one of the national polls. But back to the Jacks, how much are you in the camp of Yeah, they're a strong favorite to win this league, and why?
Yeah, I think the Valley goes 6 teams deep as far as playoff contenders, in my opinion. So I do think it is going to be very competitive. But when you look at South Dakota State, who they bring back, and also some of the sub D1 transfers that they brought in that are, um, if they're not in the rotation, they're going to provide really good depth, and some of them could even step into starting positions as well, especially on the defensive side of the football. So I think the depth is there now compared to last year. I think the talent is there. Sometimes just injury luck. Both South Dakota schools really had tough injury luck last year. Sometimes the football gods just it swings in the other way, and you get better injury luck the next season. So I'm really high on South Dakota State. I think the Jacks will be among the top contenders to Montana State's throne. I'm really interested to see how the cornerbacks play, and then maybe even more interested to see how the offensive line plays. They bring back a lot of experience, but I thought the South Dakota State offensive line set the bar so high that last year, like they were pretty decent, but when you compare them to the other offensive lines in the past, it was like, man, they're really struggling. I don't know if they were really struggling, but there were times when, it just seemed like there wasn't great communication. There's a lot of defensive linemen knifing through the line of scrimmage, a lot of TFLs. Who knows with that. One guy was supposed to double team at the point of attack before climbing to the second level, but he climbed too early. So maybe there's some miscommunication there. Maybe the running backs didn't see, the holes or the cutback lanes. Sometimes it seemed like Chase Mason was sometimes overly cautious with the ball where, hey, I got a guy coming. Maybe I can make some magic happen, or maybe I just eat it, take the sack. It seemed like he was kind of more toward the latter early on in the season. So some of the stuff wasn't all on the offensive line, but I just felt they didn't really get a good, consistent push until the UND game. They had a pretty good push. The New Hampshire game, they had a pretty good push as well. But they certainly need to take it to the next level if the Jacks want to win another title.
You've been covering the FCS level for almost 15 years, and so and just in Fargo alone, man, you've had Easton Stick, Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, Brock Larson. Okay, and then there's been Bo Brungard put up some incredible numbers last year, but pro quarterbacks who look fit for the part for the NFL. Mark Gronowski at SDSU, also another great example, but he didn't get drafted. Where do you put Chase Mason just in terms of physical tools, what you've seen? We know he's only started 9 games at quarterback, but as far as NFL ready, you've covered a lot of FCS quarterbacks. Where do you put him?
Yeah, I think he's up there just from his raw talents. There are just some guys you watch, and I'm not going to pretend like it is difficult to project FCS guys to the next level because there are, absolute studs that are all Americans, but they just don't go to the NFL because they don't have the build or the speed. Meanwhile, there are other guys who are a little bit less on the radar, but their raw ability, ends up getting them into the 6th or 7th round. But from just a raw ability, from the quarterback position, there are some guys that you watch and you go, okay, the ball looks different coming out of their arm. Like Carson Wentz, like it just looked different coming off of his hand. Jaden Craig from Harvard last year, he now transferred to TCU, but he had a really good arm as well. But just with the way the ball pops out of Chase Mason's hand, like it just looks different, and it is kind of Aaron Rodgers esque as far as like it's like a flick of the wrist, and it's not always the most orthodox throwing motion, but he can still get it there. He can whistle it. He obviously has the size and the speed as well. So all the tools are there. It's just kind of honing in on his craft. I think his footwork could probably get better. His accuracy I think overall is pretty good, but and then just kind of like the small stuff, having command of the offense. Can he make checks at the line of scrimmage? If he sees a blitz coming, can he check to the other play? Can he check a run that's going to the left, to the right? And then as I'm sure he'll have plenty of NFL interest this next offseason, he'll maybe get some visits. Like when they put him up on the whiteboard to diagram stuff, what you're seeing, like that goes a long way as well beyond just the physical tools. So no doubt, I think the hype is deserved. And if he can stay healthy and then crush the pre-draft process, I think he's going to be a pretty fast riser on NFL draft boards.
2 more on the way out with Sam Herder. We'll do one USD, one UND. Your reaction to USD-Modrzewski, the freshman, getting the nod to play quarterback for the Yotes is what?
Yeah, not surprised. I thought I said on our Mondak football show that I thought it was either going to be Modrzewski or Jackson Proctor, and I also said that if it isn't Proctor, I still think he's going to play a lot. I feel like they are going to have some quarterback packages for him, and he's not just a runner as well. Like he's a capable thrower. I saw it a couple of years ago at Dartmouth when he had a really nice season and won a lot of games there. But I think Austin has the highest ceiling out of all of them. 6'5". I mean, all your listeners know his background, from high school and his size and his arm strength and all that. So, I think he has the highest ceiling. He also might have the lowest floor. With that said, just because you throw a redshirt freshman out there and when the lights are bright, he could shine, or things could also be moving a little bit too fast for him. But I think they'll have good weapons on the outside. I think their offensive line has a chance to be better. Plus, I mean, you have the two-headed running back monster as well, Charles Pierre Jr., Keandre Jones-Logan. I think Coach Fitzgerald and that offensive staff, they're going to put Austin in good situations. They're not going to say, all right, we're throwing the ball 40 times today. It's all on you, young man. Like he'll be in a good situation. So I wasn't surprised. And I think he'll have a solid freshman season, maybe even a really good one. But if he sticks around, I think he's going to be like that franchise type guy for the Yotes.
At UND, big injury on the defense to Lance Rucker. He'll be back in October, or that's the projected return, according to head coach Eric Schmidt. I mean, this is, again, a team that's emerged as kind of a top 10 quality national program, but how much does this injury to one player, in your mind, affect the entire defense, if not the entire team?
Yeah, it is a huge deal. I think Rucker is one of the better overall defensive players in the FCS. I think he had a legit shot at winning the Buck Buchanan Award. Plus, he has an NFL future, for sure. And so you hope with foot injuries, it doesn't linger or anything like that. So his medicals can be looking good during the pre-draft process. But yeah, he's incredibly disruptive. TFL, sacks, forced fumbles, all of those things. So it is significant. They do have another preseason All-American at defensive end in Caden Vig. I mean, I think they'll be good at defensive tackle. And so it hurts, but I think they have other pieces on the defensive line to at least kind of steady the boat a little bit while he is rehabbing. And the good news for UND is they do play Nebraska, but they play 6 unranked FCS teams to start the year along with Nebraska. And then their final 5 games are all against preseason ranked teams. So even without Rucker, on paper, they should go 6-0 versus the FCS. Then they start playing the South Dakota States and the Youngstown States in mid-October. That is right when those preseason ranked games start. I think South Dakota State is October 17th, somewhere around there. So that is really when the last half of the year is really when the Fighting Hawks we're going to find out just how good they are. And that might line up right when Rucker is possibly set to return. So I think they can steady the boat for the time being. And then, once he's back, that'll be a big plus for them.
You were correct. It is October 17th when UND will be once again hosting SDSU. And then the next week, the Hawks will have to go to Vermillion. But yeah, early on, they've got Long Island, then St. Thomas, then Portland State, at Nebraska, but then Indiana State and Murray State. So yeah, it's a favorable schedule for a key injury. Sam, this was great. Really appreciate it. Would love to do this semi-regularly, if not regularly. And in the meantime, you got that Mondak podcast, and everything can be found at Sam Herder FCS and samherdersports.com.
It's not samherdersports.com. It's like patreon.com/CW/Sam Herder Sports. But again, if you just Google Sam Herder Sports Patreon, it'll bring you right there.
Okay. Appreciate it. And best of luck. I'd say, hey, I'm pulling for you. Of course I'm pulling for you, but I'm pretty sure this is going to work out for you pretty well. So congratulations. Sincerely.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. And I know a lot of your listeners, I've noticed, I get a notification every time I get a new subscription. So seeing a lot of South Dakota folks subscribing. So I really appreciate the support so far.
All right. He's Sam Herder for him and Matt Vitztham and our video producer, Cordell Wright. That's it for today's show. Happy hour and cheers.
You need anything else, John?
No, I think I'm good, Greg. I think I'm going to tap out.
All right. Have a good night.